The session on the app.
Take it away.
Thank you, Jason.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So it's nice to be presenting early in the morning after the pub crawl. How's everybody feeling? So I've been presenting for quite some time, and I remember my first presentation at a colleague in the audience. I'm very proud of myself after he was done. He came up to me. He said, "I didn't know that your presentation was going to be about vacuum cleaners." I said, "What are you talking about? What do you mean vacuum cleaners?" Well, it really sucked. So I'll do that. That was a flop. Anyway, I'll do my best to not make this seem like vacuum cleaners today. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about developing, finding, and executing. So we're developing student personas, we're finding your audience, and we're executing effective email campaigns. And so the agenda is as follows. I'll tell you a little bit about us and my friends who will be co-presenting with me. Talk about understanding the recruitment funnel. We'll go into developing student personas, how to find your audience. Then Dove, my good friend, will come and talk to us about executing an effective email campaign. And if there's time, we'll go deeper into an ROI analysis and then open up for questions. So about us. First, my name is Jonas Sider. I'm with Prospect Cloud. I am the director of the graduate enrollment program. And I work with graduate and executive programs to help curate a very high priority audience, develop student personas so they can do really directed and targeted outreach. I'm also, you can tell by my giant stature, I'm a former Olympian in beach volleyball. My bum set spike is pretty mean. Then we have Mark Forsyth from the University of North Carolina. It's a special event. I'm actually an alum of the business school there, so it's really nice to have him here. And he's also he's the director of marketing for their MAC program. He's also a world-class origami artist. And unlike origami, he does not fold under pressure. And then lastly, Dove Hirsch. I know the program says Mark Haas will be presenting today, but his understudy, Dove Hirsch, is coming in. He's our CSO, Chief Strategy Officer. He's also an all-around good guy most of the time, but he's afraid of clowns. So, understanding the recruitment funnel. First, this is how you think of the recruitment funnel, right? I mean, raise your hand if this is in your mind how you think of the recruitment funnel. For the most part. It's an upside-down pyramid. You have prospects come in and you nurture those prospects until they come out as enrollees. There's attrition along the way. But let's talk about how the recruitment funnel really looks. Now, we talk with programs all the time, and an overwhelming theme is reactivity versus proactivity. They're always waiting for someone to happen, someone to raise their hand. So really the top of the funnel isn't just prospects, it's inbound prospect. And so we don't really know, they've raised their hand in some way, but we don't know who they are. We don't know how big that audience really is. And then we're hoping that they inquire. We're hoping that they give us their information so that we can actually reach out to them and start having meaningful conversations. But we know that the largest areas of attrition is from that ethereal cloud of prospects into actually getting their information for follow-up. And then we see the inquiry to application is actually a 29% median conversion rate from inquiry to application. So a little over 1 in 4 inquiry actually turns to an application. And from there, depending on the program, the median admit rate is about 81%. And then you have deposits and some melt in the enrollee, and so the inability to close after you expended time and resources on getting people all the way through the funnel, you finally get an enrollment and hopefully they matriculate throughout your entire program. Now, this is what it actually looks like. Not the upside down pyramid, it's more like a needle. And the problem is that in higher ed, we've grown comfortable with this. That this is what we know and this is how we operate. And so we need to turn that on its head. And so how the recruitment funnel should really look? Well, you should think of it as an inbound prospect first, and that funnel management is key. Now, once you have someone in the funnel, you have to have a consistent process in place so that you know how to communicate and you can bring someone from the top of the inbound funnel all the way through to enrollment. But we also need to be mindful of the outbound prospects and how to fill the pipeline. through a targeted and pinpoint audience, being precise about who you're actually targeting so that your message goes out to the right people and the right eyeballs at the right time. And so your job is to fill the funnel with the right kind of people. And that's when we say, we make it rain. And so actually I'm going to invite Mark Forsyth up here to talk a little bit about how he sees the recruitment funnel from his perspective.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because this is one of the reasons that we're working with Prospect Cloud, and it's why we do things, and I think it's why everybody in the room looks for people in that lucrative green wedge. We all really hope that people are coming to us and that they're sitting there and they're waiting to be informed. And you're going to hear a little bit more about this later when I talk about about the persona development. But one of the things that our program, Jonas glossed over, but I market the accounting program at UNC Keaton Flagler. And one of the things that we've taken a very unique approach in that we're not selling our program, we're not promoting our program near as much as we're selling the outcome, and we're selling the profession of accounting. And so this notion that there are people out there, and what we're going to talk later about is a specific type of person, that there are people out there who are sitting in jobs right now, scratching their head, wondering how they're going to get promoted, or thinking this is even the right career for them. Those people have probably never, may have hinted at the thought of going back to graduate school, but for the most part, that's not on their mind. They're like left alone, they're never going to really become inquiries for us. They're just going to go on about their way and shop for jobs on LinkedIn or kiss their boss's ass or do whatever it takes to get that promotion. And what we're trying to inject in that through that huge little cloud up there is to try to hint to people that we're out there, that the accounting profession is out there, that accounting knowledge can help them get a promotion. We'll talk more about that all later. But the important thing for us was that on the former slide, or the previous slide, when Jonas was talking about how tight it got, we said, you know what, we can help fix that with some funnel management, but what we really needed to do was have more people at the top of the funnel. We needed a bigger pot to choose from so that as people got weeded through that narrow needle, as he talked about, we'd have a fatter needle, basically.
Yeah, and you'll just start to see much more qualified prospects in the green part, and attrition will be less already ground. So let's talk about developing student personas and how we're pinpointing our target audience. Now, does it 2 and 20 mean anything to anyone in this audience? In the finance world, it has a finite meaning. It's how hedge fund managers actually compensate. They get 2% management fees, 20% performance fees, and they make a lot of money. Well, it has meaning in the higher ed marketing world too. So typical higher ed institutions are spending about 2% of tuition revenue on marketing, while for-profit institutions are spending upwards of 20%. It's 10 times as much. And even though these are percentages, it's a huge nominal difference too. So what does this mean? That the landscape for higher ed is getting much more competitive. We all know this. And I'm not here telling you have to spend 10 times more money. What I'm telling you is you have to be 10 times smarter about how you allocate your resources. And it's really important that you know your audience, and so that you can really target that audience and make your dollars go further. So how do we develop student personas? There's 3 buckets. There's the motivation bucket, why people do things, what's driving them professionally and personally. And we look at the experience bucket. This is factual data, where they work. And now, I know we have an undergraduate audience and a graduate audience, so even though this is focused on a graduate audience, the principles here are easily applicable to an undergraduate audience as well. So we're talking about ideal backgrounds and where they work, their academic backgrounds, their personal backgrounds, and then their preferences. How do they send and receive new information? Now, throughout this, there's going to be a lot of questions, and there's not going to be a ton of answers. But what we can do, and what we've developed is a student persona assessment guide. So at the end, I'll give everyone an opportunity it just makes the student persona development process very easy. So we'll go through at a high level what it looks like, and then afterwards everybody can access the guide. So first, let's talk about measuring motivation and the 6 spokes to this wheel. So we professional goals, life goals, what defines success, their family dynamic, what their peer groups are doing, what are their pain points. So rather than go into everything, and for the sake of time, we'll focus on a couple of these. First, we'll look at professional goals. What's driving them professionally? Is it money? Is it status? Is it accomplishments? Is it teamwork? Is it just the overall sense of doing good? What does your current growth track look like? Are you equipped to handle a bigger role? These are a lot of the questions that go towards professional goals. And then we look at pain points. What's keeping them up at night? What challenges you in your role? What are you missing professionally to grow? Are you happy with your career, etc.? And then finally, peer group. So many people measure themselves by what their peers are doing, so it's really important to understand how people are viewed by their peers. What's the common track for their peers? How do they measure up? Now, it's important to know this because you need to start having conversations with your prospects that are relevant conversations and creating and tailoring messages that resonate with them. And to really know what drives them is key to that, so that when you reach them, you're sending the right message. Now, evaluating experience. Now, this is really the factual data. Professional experience, where they work, what industries they're in, what roles and titles they hold, who they report to, who reports to them, how big is their company. Then there's education, what their background is. Do they have advanced degrees already? Do they have undergraduate degrees? Are you a GPA-driven program? Honors or awards? And so this is all demographic information that's key in helping you find your audience. And then finally, personal information, age, are they married, children? And this is applicable to the exec ed and graduate community, but it's in undergrad this is sort of less important, except location is obviously important. So now we're moving to pinpointing preferences and how prospects send and receive new information. Now, you can see here that social media driven and email driven. These are how people are communicating these days. And they're also doing it over the internet, over smartphones. So it's 75.1% as of 2014. You'll forgive me, because that's the last statistic that I can find as of 2014. It's only grown from there. So your content now has to be, not only has to be formatted for regular PC delivery or Apple delivery, but also mobile delivery. And I'll throw a caveat out there that my father just joined Facebook last week, so I give it a couple days before it breaks. So be mindful of that. And so pinpointing preferences, these are the questions we have to ask. What associations and networking groups does your core audience belong to? How much research are they actually doing over their phone? How frequently are they accessing email? And Doe will dive into the statistics later. They're pretty impressive. How they're searching for programs, if it's a generic search or just going directly to you. What blogs or publications they're going to. How much time they actually spend on the social media sites. This will help you steward your resources to the right channels. Okay, so these questions are great, but how do we find the answers? Well, we talk to people. We talk to current students, we talk to past students. We talk to the admissions council committees that are talking to people every day. So we get an idea of what's driving these students. We talk to prospective students who are actually in the process. We talk to admitted students who didn't actually go through, and we ask them questions and why. And then we look at digital metrics. You're the masters of your domain. You can track the data. How much time are people spending on certain pages of your website? What content is driving them? Who are the type of people? What are the type of people that are liking your social media presence? And then finally, online sources. There's so many wonderful forums out there where people are posting and exchanging information. You have to be in tune with what they're saying. So you have to make sure that you are on top of it and gathering information to ensure that you're getting the right information of what people are saying. And so once you gather all that information, what does a student persona look like? And this is it. So the requirement is an avatar. That's key to every student persona. And an alliterative name. So this is Financial Fred. Financial Fred is age 25 to 32. He's been in the workforce 3 to 9 years. He has a finance background. The program is relatively local, so he lives within a 2-hour drive. And then some bio information. He has a business degree, unmarried or newly married, and he wants to grow in his role, but he needs an MBA. He went to a good school. He has a decent GPA. He's competitive. He'll add to the classroom dynamic. And then finally, his preference is how he's communicating. He's always attached to email. He's on financial websites, and he uses social media on a personal level. And we dig a little deeper. We say, okay, what's driving him? And we come up with these wonderful quotes. I need an MBA, but I'd like to stay close to home to avoid expense. Or what sort of financial aid is available? So he's financially sensitive. He wants to go, he wants to invest in his future, but he's nervous about the expense. So the messages that we send to a financial Fred are, maybe scholarship driven, grant driven, financial aid driven, about how to get a higher ed how to get an advanced degree without breaking the bank. Now, I'm going to pass the floor back to Mark, who's going to tell you a little bit about how UNC's MAC program developed their student persona and what it looks like.
Cool. So this is a real example. We've developed 7 personas for the students in our program. We have both an on-campus program and we have an online program. So the personas are different for the 2 of them. We have 4 online personas, and one of them is this guy, Analyst Alex. One of the things that we've noticed about our online program is that it's gravitating. It's not exclusive. You would think it's exclusive to working professionals. It's gravitating toward that. We still have a good chunk of people who are straight through school that just prefer to do their degree online. But for the most part, they're working professionals. And one of those personas is Analyst Alex. And so Analyst Alex is 27 to 34 years old. He's been out of school and working professionally for 5 to 12 years. He comes really from any undergraduate education background, but he's now sitting in some sort of CPA, a sub-CPA level job. He's on the track to become a controller of his company or VP of finance or in that realm, but he's got a financial bend to him, but he's not, he doesn't quite have the skills or the credential to be in those roles yet. For us, generally, he sits right now somewhere in the southeast or mid-Atlantic, in the kind of realm of DC to Atlanta. He has put off graduate school to jump straight into the workplace. He's got some young kids, new mortgage. You can kind of get the gist. One of the big things about Alex is that he's sitting in this spot where he's reflecting on his career. And Analyst Alex takes one of 2 shapes. And these could be, you could think that these might be completely separate personas, but because all of the other demographic, education data, age, everything else fit, we kind of split the persona into 2 kind of two mindsets, sort of a Alex A and an Alex B, if you will. And so Alex right now is thinking, if you're looking on the left here, he's thinking really of 2 things. He's either sitting in a chair and he's saying, you know what, I'm ready to be promoted, but I know I'm not ready for it. There's something out there that's missing. What can I do? Or he's sitting there and he's really actually kind of frustrated. Similar mindset. He knows he needs to do something different, but it's not about just, it's not going to do it for him if his boss came and gave him a promotion. He needs to do something different. And so similar but different. What he's also doing is he's contemplating what that next step might be, and he's asking himself a couple questions. He's saying, I know I need to go back to school. What degree is best for me, and is it going to be worth it? He's also, if he's in the mindset of maybe I need to do something completely different, he's asking himself, what else is out there for me? I'm still young, so I have time to figure this out. That is Analyst Alex. Like I said, there's 3 others. But this one I think is particularly appropriate for this presentation because it really speaks to this working professional who we really need to find. Those people aren't naturally coming to us. They're not taking the GMAT exam. They're, like I said in my first kind of set of comments, they're not naturally thinking right now that they need to, they know something's missing, but they're not necessarily thinking grad school yet. So we're trying to get that into their mind.
So this is the student persona assessment guide I was talking about earlier. You could easily access it on the web, but afterwards we could put out a list and you can email you directly if it's helpful. So the next question is great. We know our student persona, we know what the audience looks like now. How do we find them? And so the idea now is to turn your student persona, Financial Fred, into an actual student. So how do we turn Financial Fred into Steve Owens, a real person? And so we all know the channels that we use, all the way to TV, display, email, social media, TV, radio. We spend dollars in so many ways, and it's a lot of spray and pray and scattershot advertising. But we're talking about really doing some targeted, focused advertising. So we want to find that audience so that we can target our advertising towards them. So what we found is, and it's intuitive, the more personal your interaction with the prospect, the more effective the tactic. So on the upper right, you'll see more effective tactics. On the lower left, less effective. So we'll start with face-to-face. So to be able to shake a hand and look a prospect in the eye is the key to closing, right? That's why we work so hard to get someone through the funnel so that they finally interview with us or apply to us or gain more information, come visit, shake our hands, and talk to us, or even listen to them on the phone. These are the types of interactions that are most effective. And so that's the most personal, that's the most intimate. Then we find that email is really the second most effective in that you can be so personal with your email. If you really know your audience and know the data and you have the information, you can send out very targeted emails that appeals directly to the student persona, to that person's ideals, so that you can start to connect with them on a personal level and then hopefully bring them to that next phase, which is a face-to-face meeting. And so that's why those fall in the upper right-hand quadrant. And then you have in the middle of the road, less personal though, display, search engine, direct mail campaigns, which are costly and less effective, and other social media advertising. These are good, but less personal. It's a lot of banner advertising to a retargeted audience. There's SEO that's not personal. You can't use their name when addressing them through SEO, like you can through email or through face-to-face conversations. Then finally, in the lower left, we see TV and radio. They're good for brand awareness, but they're not really great for converting a prospect all the way to an enrollee. So let's focus on getting as close to the upper right as possible, right? And so what are the resources to find your prospects? Now, selfishly, Prospect Cloud is one of them. We actually help curate the list. So the way we work is we work with organizations to help develop student personas, go through the entire process to know the parameters of your audience. And then we actually bring that audience to you for your email outreach, the actual data. And then there's the obvious organic database compilation. Over the years, you've collected so much data about different people who've raised their hand at one point that you have the information. And then there's the testing services. In the graduate space, the GMAT and GRE, these are people who've taken the entrance exams, undergrad, you have the SAT services. So those are easy lists to follow. The only problem with those in general is that anybody who's taking those exams, the list is being sold, and now they're being inundated by 10, 15, 20, 30 schools. And how do you differentiate? So you need to gain mind share before they're even at that stage. And then on the website, the pay-per-click, the Google AdWords, the YouTubes, the Pandoras, where you could sort of segment an audience and start directing advertising towards them. And on the social media side, the obvious three, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Those are good, as well as Pinterest, Reddit and Google+. Those are good avenues to be able to track, you know, a targeted audience. And so, with that in mind, I'm going to now pass it to my brilliant friend Dove, who's going to tell you, now that you have the student persona, and now that you have their information, he's going to tell you how to close.
Thank you, Jonas. So, as Jonas had shared, I'm an all-around, half-decent guy most of the time. Deep-seated fear of clowns, I think we all understand. What he didn't share is that I love to geek out about the data. And if you'd like to spend a lot of time doing so, I'd be happy. I'd love nothing more. I'll share a little bit now. But a very interesting study that came out of UC Irvine, MIT, and Microsoft, I think in May of this year, indicated that we, on average, proactively check our email. We don't get a chime that tells us we need to check it. We proactively look at our email, on average, 74 times a day, which is a little bit crazy. Very interesting. But the most interesting thing that I took away from that study was we're going to our email in the hopes, the excitement, that something interesting is coming through. And the study authors liken it to pulling that lever on a slot machine in Las Vegas, which is just kind of crazy, which tells me people want to be connected with a great opportunity, a meaningful message, something personalized and relevant through email every day. And we've probably all heard email is on its way out. It's going to die. It's never going to survive amidst this sea of new communication channels. But I just don't think that that's the case. So in order to start thinking about how we engage and utilize email effectively, we need to, I think, change the way we approach a little bit how we market. So for most of us, we're sort of stuck in the 80s and 90s when it comes to marketing. We spend a lot of time and money, effort on branding, brand awareness, brand consistency, brand voice, and all of that is important to a point, okay? What matters most is connecting with somebody. It's not necessarily about my logo, how beautiful the iron gates are on my institution's property, and all those things. Those things do matter as well, and as Jonas had shared, we want to have a face-to-face engagement with that prospect. We want them to come to our campus. We want to spend time with them, and we want to show off all that we have to offer. But how do we get them there? And the key here is to think a little bit differently about marketing. The best marketing today does a few things. So number one, it makes the message all about the audience. Okay? Why is that? Simply put, they don't care about us at all. Your graduates care. They've tied their brand to your institution. The institution cares. And your prospects care a little bit, but they're never going to care as much as they care about themselves. So it needs to be all about the audience. It needs to be personalized. And then it also needs to be ROI driven, okay? Your marketing efforts have to be tied to some type of metrics. You have to be following what's going on and how they're engaging with you, or how they aren't, right? Are they not even opening the email? When they open it, are they clicking through? These types of things. And what's interesting about that is marketing today more closely resembles what sales has always been. Okay? So we do need to think about ourselves in the context of being a salesperson. Okay? So I want to talk a little bit about what the process is. And we could spend a lot of time on all of the ins and outs, the steps, the tactics. And those are all important. But something that I think is central, that has to happen in order for this to be effective, is to look at any engagement that you use email through the lens of learning. Okay? You need a feedback loop. Because this is not a single event. This is not a single campaign. A campaign will fit within your approach. But this is really a new process that you would adopt. It's a new way of looking at how you're going to engage prospects through email. And it starts by defining objectives. Simple enough. The more focused your objective is, the better. So if you were looking to increase enrollment across the board, that's a fairly broad objective. And every program will have a different opinion on how you do that and maybe where you're looking. If you're looking to increase enrollment for a specific program, or you're looking to increase enrollment from, I don't know, international students as opposed to national, as opposed to people right in your own backyard. I had a great conversation yesterday with somebody talking about how they were looking at an institution that was spending all their time marketing in the northeastern United States when they weren't even talking to the people in their own city, which was really interesting. Not uncommon, I don't think. So we need to define our objective and be focused around it. You need to build your campaign, define the target audience, and create content and the messaging and the resources. All of that is key. Measure your outcomes, okay? Look at what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, and be the first one to raise your hand and say, this isn't working, so what are we gonna do about it? Okay? Collect data on all the relevant conversion units and metrics, and see where you're clearing a path, making it smooth and easy for your prospect to arrive at your doorstep, and where you're creating obstacles. Okay? Because we all do it. It's not intentional. It's just a matter of breaking bad habits and then improve. Again, this is a new process. There's no, a campaign by definition has a beginning and an end. This is not a campaign. This is shifting the way you think about how you're going to reach out and target in a very focused way and have a relationship, a personalized and relevant experience with that prospect. So I want to hand it over back to Mark. He's going to talk a little bit about how they've done this. It's a great example from the perspective of how they've constructed an email campaign around this.
Yeah, and before I jump into the campaign, I should say one other thing. The objective of this, because as Doug pointed out, we needed an objective. Our objective is pretty specific. The objective was get working professionals in DC, Charlotte, Raleigh, and Atlanta to show up to a webinar to learn about our Master of Accounting program. That's the goal. And so what we did was we built, if you remember back to Analyst Alex, that was the persona that we brought forward, and we said, that's the picture of our guy. What do we need to say to him? And as I mentioned before, there were two starting points where Analyst Alex's head sits in one of two camps. He's either asking himself, and what we like to do, and we do this a lot when we build personas and when we talk and when we brainstorm internally with our team and with our colleagues, is we always try to ask it, and Dove made this a very good point, they're people thinking about themselves. We always are trying to put ourselves in the place to ask the questions that the people we're marketing to are asking. Not the questions that we want to solve, but what the things they want to solve. And so you'll see everything on this screen really is, in big bold letters, is their questions, and in small little letters is our response and what the email topic is. And so the 5 questions you see on here start with, am I promotion ready, or should I get a fresh start? That's the first thing he's thinking, has nothing yet to do at all about our program. The next question, either way, comes to, what do I need to learn to make one of those two things pay off? Then the next thing is probably, if we're doing it well, it's getting a degree, getting a Master of Accounting degree, getting any degree actually at that point. And the question that he's going to ask at that point is this really going to pay off? Working professionals, people in that, I mean, we mentioned, mortgage, kids, money's an issue. Mid-level job, so you take a mid-level job, mortgage, kids, living in DC or Atlanta or Charlotte, not the cheapest cities, money's going to matter. And so we're going to need to show, he's going to be asking himself, if I make this investment in time and energy, is it really going to pay off for me? And then if we're really doing our job well, the question that he's hopefully going to ask, because he's seen this through the email trickling in, is what is this UNC Mac thing that keeps trickling to all these emails? What's that all about? And the call to action, of course, would be the webinar. And so what we're doing is attaching email to each of those 5 questions. And so the first email that went out to this group was how to evaluate your career. Had nothing to do about our program. There was a little drip at obviously our logo's on it. There's a little drip at the bottom, and we're driving people to a blog article. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we're driving people into an article that has a little bit more of our language in it. But for the most part, the email was really, are you ready for a promotion? Like, is your career ready for that? The second email that went out, tied to the fresh start, was all about when is it the right time to go back to grad school? And again, nothing really about specific to our program, was really about just the general topic of, are you even ready to go back to school? Then we started talking about the accounting skills attached to what people need to learn and how accounting skills can really help you in a lot of different ways. That's a whole other side topic. If anybody in this room is scratching their head about their career, I can really explain to you how accounting career can jet into a VP of finance role, even if you're in a marketing capacity. And then about paying off, we put together a neat document and a neat email about just the ROI of a Master of Accounting degree, and we kind of plugged that with how it stacks up to an MBA, which Joan is, I'm sure, is just dying to read, figure out how his UNC Keenan Flagler MBA is stacking up to the Master of Accounting degree he passed by. And then lastly, so now 5 emails in, and probably to this audience where our cadence is every 2 weeks that they're getting these. And so 10 weeks in, we're finally going to invite them to a webinar. But as you've seen from the 8 weeks prior, the 10 weeks prior, we haven't said much yet about our program. And so at that point, we've hopefully triggered enough. We've narrowed it down a bit, but really we've tried to keep a focus that's more about them and the questions they're asking than really about us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. And I love what you've done here because it just illustrates that there are essentially 2 personas or 2 categories that you're starting from. You can do this for, how many have you done? 8? 7? 7 different. And it really only grows from there as you start to assess how effective are we converting these people through the process. So I want to talk a little bit about executing an effective email campaign, okay? And there are a lot of elements. I have a question back.
Can we do questions as we go, or wait till the end?
Bring it.
And we cadence. In the commercial world, I wouldn't expect my customers to remember me 2 weeks later on a simple hello email. How did you determine that cadence?
The overall start to finish, from the very first thought of, maybe I should do something, to I'm going to start an application, is 12 to 18 months for our program. So with that long of a window and talking to somebody who's so far upstream, they do things very much in a hurry once they've committed, we found. So when we're talking to our students and looking at the life cycle, it's a long, long time between first time I thought about it to first time I clicked through to your application. Then it happens in a hurry. And so our view on it is these people can be nurtured for 6, 12, even up to 18 months.
Okay. We'll have time for additional questions once we're done. But I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there's a few key points I think that are important. And I know we've all considered this as we've thought carefully and methodically about crafting and sending an email. So how many of you have received an email that on the front line it's do not reply at xyzaddress.com, and you were just dying to know what that email was, right? That's what I thought. So don't do that. So we often get those. At the other side of it, you don't want to be too personal right away, okay? If you're too personal right away, they don't necessarily understand why you're contacting them. So leverage the brand that you represent effectively, okay? Be somewhat specific. And so some of the examples that Mark is speaking about, their from is going to be maybe University of North Carolina accounting program, right? So it's pretty focused. Once they've raised their hand, they've clicked something, they've opted in some way for more information, get personal. Make that one-to-one connection. That's going to be valuable. So that was from line. Subject line. Your value statement, address a pain point, make it personal. Do not be lengthy. So about, I think as of late, 40% of all emails that are opened on a mobile device first, before they're opened on a PC. So rule of thumb right now, and this is always changing, but is stay under 50 characters. Just be focused, be relevant, but do not be lengthy. And that's, if you knew me better, you'd think that was really funny coming from me. Text versus HTML. So there's a really simple point here. if you have the best from line, you have the best message, the most relevant and pertinent and personalized information, and you've done all the diligence you need to on identifying the audience that you need to be speaking with, and the email never reaches your audience, it doesn't do much good. So HTML, email templates that are filled with images, they're dramatically increasing your risk that your email's not going to get where it needs to go. Less is more. Simple is better. Okay? So there's just a few key points that I want to highlight. So,
Yeah, so with that in mind, I was just going to share a little bit about, this isn't the actual email, it's a mocked up version that's a little bigger so you can all read it. But in general, it looks pretty much like this. So as Dove pointed out, we use UNC Master of Accounting program because we are focused, again, in this campaign on DC to Atlanta, where we actually have brand recognition. We can use the words UNC. If we were in Colorado, where there's a different UNC, or California, where people perceive that as Northern California, we often will spell out our long-ass name, but can't really help that the state has got a lot of letters in it. But the point is, we also use the word accounting in the subject, in the from field for a very important reason. Let's just be honest, not everybody's going to open our email, but it's all going to show up in their inbox. And if I have the words accounting, UNC, and career, and ready, all there, landing on the phone, and they never open it, there's still some impression value to that. And so, and to Dove's point, when we jump into subject line, we write subject lines that are, in an interesting way, long but short. And what I mean by long but short is that if the first 4 words work without the remaining 7 words, you've made some, you can make some concessions and you can buy yourself more length. And so, we always, especially in high quantity emails, we always do an A/B test. And so for this email, there's 2 subject lines where, is your career ready for the dance? We tested, and is your career ready shows up on your phone. So if you haven't read the funny little "it for the dance," it's fine. How-to guide to climbing the corporate ladder. Again, not as great of a subject line. In fact, results-wise on this one, we had an interesting thing I can describe in a little bit, but longer corporate ladder probably should have been at the front of the line, but the point is, it was a test. So the email, very much like Dove pointed out, couple things to note. It was written with them in mind. So the first thing that we always started with was a question that they could reply to and hopefully get their heads nodding. And then it went into more text. It wasn't just a series of questions like it looks like on there. There was a little bit of text, a couple paragraphs. And our approach has been with email is to drive people to an article. One of the things, I mean, it's a little difficult to explain some of the stuff we're talking about. It can't all be captured in a little banner ad. And so what we do is we try to drive people into our website or into our blog with some interesting content and try to be extremely useful. And so this was an article, Prepare Your Career for Its Next Step. If you've read the email, or if you've read the subject line and you opened it, it should be a fairly straightforward payoff. What we also like to do with all of our content in this nature is have a secondary downloadable call to action where people, and we do this for a couple reasons, and I'll share that in just a second. So we put together a little how-to guide, a simple little kind of one-page white paper on tips that you can use in the corporate world or in your job to climb the ladder. Again, probably fits with the Analyst Alex prototype. At the bottom of all of our emails, we have a little footer where we, drop in. If someone wants to learn more, join a webinar, or apply, we put in a little footer to that effect. This is the anatomy. It's sort of starting to describe it connected to the email. This is how all of these sort of early email chains work. So what we drive through is an email, links to the article. Article is longer information, and then links through a landing page that has a small form in it that we get people to fill out and add more information in to a downloadable piece. Clearly, we already know their email address, so asking for it again might sound sort of silly, but